of many charming and wistful moments from Melvin and Howard, the saga of Melvin Dumar and his encounter, maybe, with billionaire Howard Hughes. Melvin and Howard is one of 5 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Sneak Previews. Across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And this is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. Now, in addition to Melvin and Howard, we'll be reviewing 4 other new movies this week, including Paul Newman in Fort Apache, the Bronx, Elliott Gould and Bill Cosby in Walt Disney's The Devil of Max Devlin, and Flying Saucers in Texas in Hangar 18. Stay tuned. Now Gene starts with The Incredible Shrinking Woman.
Well, our first film is sort of a disappointment for me because when I first heard about a year and a half ago that Lily Tomlin was going to star in The Incredible Shrinking Woman, a remake of that 1957 science fiction classic The Incredible Shrinking Man, right then I was laughing. That's because with Lily Tomlin's off-the-wall existential sense of humor, the idea of her playing a housewife who shrinks seemed very clever. Unfortunately, The Incredible Shrinking Woman is a very dumb script. Tomlin shrinks because of all the chemicals in the newfangled products her husband, Charles Grodin, an advertising executive, keeps bringing home for her to try. Here's the way it goes when she tries to fix bacon for breakfast while her Latino maid boogies in the kitchen. Somehow I thought it would be funnier when she got small, and I thought also the special effects with her would be better. But because of Lily Tomlin's weird sense of humor, I also thought she would also send up a real psychological crisis inside her character. Instead, the people who wrote and directed this movie have made really just a kiddie show. Here's a ridiculous scene where Tomlin, captured by some scientists who want to study what's making her shrink, hold her captive along with an ape. Why an ape? You tell me. There are whole chunks of this movie that are incredibly bad, like that chunk. And worst of all, we know right from the beginning of the movie that Tomlin's going to be just fine at the end. That's because Tomlin, in the beginning of the movie, tells us she's going to narrate her story in flashback. So, of course, everything must have turned out okay, otherwise she wouldn't be around in the beginning to tell us the story. So that kills all the tension in the movie. It's a major disappointment, suitable only, I suppose, for the youngest of youngsters, not for me.
Well, I agree the movie is a big disappointment. I went with great expectations for Lily Tomlin, who I think is a comic genius. I love her, I adore her. I was really disappointed because I expected the movie to be a masterpiece. But I saw it at a Saturday matinee with a theater full of kids and teenagers, adolescents, and they loved it. And I wonder whether we aren't expecting it to achieve on a real big level up here when, in fact, as a kind of a Jerry Lewis sort of movie like he used to make 15 or 20 years ago, this movie is perfectly satisfactory, and I think I would recommend it for younger kids, younger audiences.
Well, the only way I come at the picture is not a predictor for the audience. I'm really sitting up here saying what my reaction to the picture is, and I must say that I was stunned by how this film not only didn't meet my expectations of Lily Tomlin, which are high, but also didn't make my expectations for a remake of a very good little science fiction movie made 24 years ago. That was an exciting little picture. This isn't exciting. We got an ape stuck in here. Why, I don't know. We've got Lily Tomlin as a little creature visiting the Mike Douglas show, so we can hear Mike Douglas sing, thank heaven, little things mean a lot.
Little things mean a lot.
I mean, didn't you sit there and wonder, why is that scene stuck in the movie? Technically, I thought it was a disaster. Special effects did not surprise me. In an era where we're having great special effects, I really didn't think this worked.
I perceive that you did not like this film.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to Paul Newman's new movie. It's Fort Apache, the Bronx, and in this one he plays a veteran cop whose beat is the toughest precinct in New York City. His daily grind includes everything from delivering babies to breaking up street fights, and in this scene, Newman and his partner have a run-in with a pimp and his prostitute, played by Pam Grier. That act of police brutality sticks in Newman's mind and causes a crisis in his career, and those kinds of nitty-gritty locations try to convince us we're looking at a fairly realistic portrait of a cop in his city. Unfortunately, though, the storyline of Fort Apache, the Bronx, is a real mess. Too many characters are introduced and they're never dealt with or heard from again, and Newman's life gets so filled up with romances and hostage rescues and hanging from ropes, personal crises, that what started out as realism turns into a vicious soap opera. I was very disappointed.
Me too. He even delivers a baby in the movie. It's been a long time, other than Slapshot, which I liked a couple of years ago from Paul Newman. It's been a long time, maybe since The Sting, since Paul Newman really made a good picture, and that's disappointing. I'm agreeing with you wholeheartedly on this film for exactly the same reason you expect. South Bronx, we know that President Carter, President Reagan have held press conferences there. It's an important part of the big city. We're interested in this area, so we're going to learn something. It's going to be a French Connection, tough, realistic? No. No. 40s, 50s cornball melodrama, one good policeman, Newman, and the rest of the cops are lousy, and most of the people in the area are lousy too. And I really saw it as sort of a star vehicle for Paul Newman and disappointed me a great deal.
There's a real contrast between the reality of that location and the old TV melodrama that they throw in there. And another thing disappointed me, The second billing in this film goes to Edward Asner. Now, a lot of people admire him from his television work. They want to see him in a real performance. They think second billing, maybe he's really going to be on the screen a lot and interact with Paul Newman, but he's not. He's only in the movie for 8 or 9 minutes. He plays, in total, he plays the commander who comes in to clean up this precinct, and then he just walks around. It's the same performance he gives on Lou Grant. Instead of walking around the city room giving orders, he's walking around the squad room, and that was sort of a disappointment. I really wanted to see him stretch a little bit.
Me too, and he does, I think, a pretty poor Irish accent playing the cop, too. Our next movie, we step up, I think, in class, is a Walt Disney comedy that I like, and it has been quite a few years since I've been able to say that. Maybe that's because The Devil and Max Devlin isn't like most Disney comedies. In fact, it has sort of an adult sense of humor. Elliot Gould stars as a Los Angeles apartment building manager serving as the front man for a crooked real estate owner. Gould is killed in a car crash, goes to hell, and there he receives an offer from Bill Cosby playing an agent of the devil. Can you believe that? A portrait of hell in a Disney movie. There's much more that's surprising in The Devil and Max Devlin, including some funny dialogue as Gould rounds up 3 young people, a stock car driver, a pop singer, and a fatherless little boy in exchange for saving his own soul. I laughed throughout this picture, enjoying it as a modest little comedy, and absolutely stunned that Disney Studios could make a movie like this complete with go-go dancers, shady record promoters, and young people who look like they really were living in the 80s. Not Disney's typical idea of the 80s, which in their last few movies has been meant something like the 1880s. So a big cheer for The Devil and Max Devlin, and some applause for those beleaguered folks at Disney Studios in Burbank. This is the kind of movie they should be making more of.
Well, Gene, I share your applause that Disney is finally creeping into the last fifth of the 20th century. But on the other hand, I didn't like this movie very much. I thought it was pretty predictable. It kind of seemed like it was a double reverse on Heaven Can Wait. It was really boring seeing all the things he was going through, trying to get the signatures on the dotted line. And I'll tell you something, I hate to go back to this, but I insist, or at least I think, for the age group that this movie is aimed at, I think they'd like The Incredible Shrinking Woman more.
Well, what's so great about it is I don't think this movie was aimed at any age group, because I liked it. I think good writing never aims at any age group, and so do the good movies. I think a good movie can be appreciated by young people and older people, and I thought this film was delightful. I laughed just in that scene where Elliot Gould says he's accused by the devil of making 11 promises of marriage, okay, to women. Now, the adult person can figure out why he might be making the 11 promises of marriage, and that's kind of amusing. I thought this was pretty good writing. I liked it a lot.
Well, I think we disagree on this one. Let's move on to one that I think we agree on, and I sure think this is one of the best movies of the year. It comes a movie I have a real affection for. It's a slice of American life called Melvin and Howard, and it's an update of that old Horatio or Alger dream where you do a millionaire a favor and he includes you in his will. Well, this time, though, the story is allegedly based on fact. The millionaire is Howard Hughes, and the hero is Melvin Dumar, an Utah gas station operator who's driving his pickup truck through the Nevada desert one morning when he comes across a man who looks like an old tramp. He gives him a lift. Jason Robards plays the old man, Howard Hughes, and Paul Matt plays Melvin Dumar, who thinks he's a great songwriter. That's a great scene there with those two guys in the cab. It looks like it might be visually boring, you might think, but I was really absorbed in that, and you can see in there, I think, the relationship between those two people. Now, here's what I like best about Melvin and Howard. After that encounter in the desert, the movie forgets all about Howard Hughes for the next hour or so and concentrates instead on the life of its unlikely hero, Melvin Dumar. Melvin goes through 2 marriages, 3 repossessed cars, several jobs, and such major crossroads in his life as being named Milkman of the Month. But winning that TV set is nothing, because one day Melvin Dumar's life really changes. 7 years after that night in the desert, Howard Hughes dies, and a mysterious last will and testament turns up in Melvin's gas station. Now, if that will is genuine, Dumar stands to inherit $156 million from the Howard Hughes estate. The movie has a field day with what happens next. Melvin and his wife are besieged by long-lost relatives, shyster lawyers, quick-buck artists with overnight propositions to start businesses. And the movie Melvin and Howard is quietly funny and perceptive as it turns the American dream inside out.
You know what I loved about this picture? I expected it to be an examination of whether or not Melvin Dumar in reality ever met Howard Hughes, and is the Mormon will real?
And who cares?
This film is really, as you called it, a slice of life. They forget that stuff pretty much. It is really just an investigation of what this sort of middle American character is all about, all the products he's involved in, and what his life is like. It's delightful. I think that really sets the scale of this picture. It's a small little film, but absolutely delightful in every single performance.
It shows a lot of imagination on the part of the screenwriter, there, Bo Goldman, who started out with the story, and then Jonathan Demme directed it, that instead of turning it into a courtroom drama, which would have been terribly boring with what the witnesses said and who was lying and what the evidence was and what the lawyer said, instead they have that at the end for a little bit, and at the beginning they have him meeting Howard Hughes. Then they expand the middle. 7 years in between. How did this guy live? If you have ever wondered what happens to the contestants on The Price is Right, you know, when they're not, go for the refrigerator, this is the story of what those people do the rest of the time. It's a fascinating,
just delightful. The
comedy.
film has gotten tremendous praise from critics across the country. I hope people don't walk in thinking it's Gone with the Wind or something like that. A small scale, absolutely lovely film.
Right.
Now we step way down in class to Hangar 18, another Dumbo movie from Schick Sun Classic Pictures, that outfit in Salt Lake City that consistently turns out awful films. Films like The Lincoln Conspiracy, Beyond and Back, In Search of Noah's Ark, In Search of Historic Jesus. You know, what will we do without them for Dogs of the Week? In their movie, someone is always in search of something, but they rarely find it. However, their incessant television commercials for their films always promise to solve great mystery. Here's the ad for their latest ripoff, Hangar 18. I want to see that. What happened October 24th, 1979? Well, does the movie fulfill that promise? Do we get the truth? No way. What we get is a phony baloney, trivial little ripoff of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Hangar 18 only teases us with all its talk about UFOs and outer space aliens. Here's the big scene in the movie where the scientists go on board the captured alien spaceship. There's one of your big discoveries. Creatures from outer space look exactly like Telly Savalas with cat's eyes. And here's the ridiculous payoff at the end of the movie. It turns out that some alien ancient creatures landed here many thousands of years ago, took a liking to Earth women, I guess they didn't like the men, and impregnated a whole bunch of the women, and they really are our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. You know, sometimes I don't know whether I'm a movie critic or a researcher for the National Enquirer. Hangar 18 is just ridiculous.
You know, I have to confess something. I am a sucker for science fiction, and these ads are so good. Now, I know that this company has made some pictures that have really disappointed me, and yet somehow I went into the theater thinking, gee, this is a fascinating subject, and that's their secret. They always take subjects that you have a genuine interest in, and then, of course, they let you down. But I was hoping, against hope, that what they found on that ship would be fascinating, and it turns out to be all anticlimactic.
You know, in some of the ads, they're saying, of course, they say it's a true story, you know, at the ads now, they've been appending this little message based on the fiction book. So they can't even make up their minds whether it's truth or fiction. It's obvious fiction. And I think when you watch this picture, you walk in at the end, you say, that's all there is to the movie? Don't I get more? You're left with a bad taste in your mouth.
You know, they have a real formula based on a fictional book and inspired by good motion pictures.
Well, now we switch to bad movies. Yes, Spot the Wonder Dog. It's time for the Dogs of the Week, where Roger and I each pick the week's worst movies.
Well, gee, my dog this week is called The Cauldron of Death. It's an Italian import. It's very badly dubbed into English, and something tells me this is not exactly a new movie. It's been retitled, I think. What clues do I have? Well, when the movie's title flashes on the screen, it's in a different print style than the rest of the credits. That's always an ominous sign. The movie stars Chris Mitchum as the son of a mafia chieftain trying to avenge his father's death by sneaking into the fortress of another Italian godfather and killing him. He outwits 6 or 8 tough guys, and in one of the movie's most ridiculous scenes, he has the mafia hitmen chasing him in 3-piece suits. They're climbing up cliffs, jumping out of trees on top of one another.
Sounds like it was inspired by The Godfather, which would make it about 8 or 9 years old.
I'll bet you're right.
Okay, my dog this week is a hot and bothersome skin flick called 11, an attempt to outdo, of course, the Bo Derek hit 10. Although the film has a couple of cute lines of dialogue, the majority of the film is predictable, hardcore, bump and grind sex, and the only erotic moments come at the very end when our 32-year-old male hero finds his 11 dream girl and they make love to the tune of the 1812 Overture. Before that, we have to suffer through a lot of very gross scenes, including a couple of people making love in a coffin. So I guess I have to say that 11 is worth maybe 3, maybe 4.
That good, huh? So much for the dogs. Now let's take another look at the main movies on this program. Lily Tomlin starred as The Incredible Shrinking Woman, a movie we both vote no on. Gene thought it was dumb and disappointing. I didn't think it was good either, but it might appeal to young audiences. Both Gene and I also voted no on Fort Apache, The Bronx, the new Paul Newman picture with an old-fashioned and incomprehensible storyline. We split, though, on The Devil and Max Devlin, the new Disney picture. Gene liked it and thought it showed some imagination and humor. I thought it was boring and predictable. 2 big yes votes, though, for Melvin and Howard, the wonderful slice of American life about a gas station attendant who almost becomes a millionaire. And finally, 2 no votes for Hangar 18, a ridiculous movie about flying saucers that leaves you asking this question: Is there anything more interesting happening in the other 17 hangars?
I wish I said that. That's it for this show. Next time on Sneak Previews, we'll review The Competition, starring Richard Dreyfuss and Amy Irving as classical pianists who fall in love. The Dogs of War, a thriller with Christopher Walken as a mercenary soldier, and Tess, Roman Polanski's adaptation of the famous Thomas Hardy novel. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.